Welcome to episode 4 of The Time is Near. It is June 2025 and the nation of Israel is still suffering greatly as the current conflict in the Middle East unfolds. How will it all end? Amazingly, the message of God given to Daniel about 2,500 years ago gives us relevant insight. It foretells how multiple attempts will be made to destroy Israel. It describes huge empires rising and falling, but Israel surviving through them all. God's plan is unfolding, and we are witnesses to his faithfulness, to his commitments to us and to Israel. It is not easy to understand the book of Daniel. Many of us love the stories in the earlier chapters, but find it difficult to make sense of the revelations Daniel received from God. In this episode, I want to unpack the meaning Daniel would have initially understood when he received the 77's prophecy recorded in Daniel chapter 9. We cannot understand this unless we know Daniel's context. And the key things to know are firstly, what the prophet Jeremiah said to Israel in Jerusalem before the before its fall to the Babylonian Empire in 605 BC. Daniel was in Jerusalem then and would have heard it. Secondly, the unfolding geopolitical situation which Daniel lived through over the first 70 years. And thirdly, how Israel followed the law of Moses. The 77's prophecy showed Daniel how God will satisfy Jeremiah's prophecy and answer the prayer for the survival of Israel and the restoration of its people and the city of Jerusalem. A restoration that will take a long time, and through this time the people will suffer greatly, but God will eventually achieve what Daniel prayed for. Even now, we are witnesses to a tiny but crucial period of what God said to Daniel. Remember that these words to Daniel are dated 538 BC, shortly after Babylon was captured by Cyrus and became the Persian king, and about 3 years before the 70 years of desolation of Jerusalem prophesied by Jeremiah would be completed. I think Daniel was really looking forward to their fulfillment, and the geopolitical events in his time would have given him hope that they would soon be fulfilled. So Daniel intercedes to God on behalf of his people, the city, and the sanctuary. He knows there are no valid grounds for deliverance because of his people's idolatry, so he appeals to God for mercy. Daniel is unsure of what God will do because he is aware of the sin and lack of repentance of his people. The 77's prophecy is God's answer to Daniel's prayer, and he expects Daniel to understand his answer. And so it is unlikely to begin fulfillment 80 years into Daniel's future, as some interpretations suggest. Okay, let's look at this prophecy. Daniel 9:24. God's answer starts by defining the duration, the physical scope, and the 6 objectives of his plan. The duration, 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city. And then 6 things are listed. You can see them in the slide. Finish transgression, make an end of sin, make atonement for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up vision and prophecy, and anoint the most holy. The Hebrew text has punctuation which divides the verse into two at the point where God deals with evil. You can see that in the slide. This center is the atonement of iniquity, which leads to everlasting righteousness. Then God's answer shows what will happen through the first 69 sevens. And Gabriel says, the angel says to Daniel, and you will know and understand that from going out of a word to restore and build Jerusalem to an anointed ruler, there will be 7 sevens. And then for 62 sevens, it will be restored and rebuilt inside and out, even in difficult times. And then after 62 sevens, an anointed one will be cut off and will have nothing. What would Daniel had understood from this verse? He would know that the word to restore and build Jerusalem was Jeremiah's. He was there when it was given and would be fulfilled after 7 sevens, that is 70 years. He would understand that this will be followed by the rebuilding of Jerusalem, which will take 62 sevens, a long, undefined time. He would understand that the rebuilding would begin when an anointed ruler appears and would continue through times of trouble. And he would probably identify this anointed ruler as Zerubbabel when Israel returned from exile after 70 years. Since Zerubbabel was a descendant of David, he would fulfill God's promise that a descendant of his would always be on the throne. Now let's look at the final 7. And it has an interesting structure, which I'm going to talk about in the next slides. Daniel would see the balance stretching across these 2 verses, which describe the final 7 because it uses typical Hebraic structures that he would know about. It contains 2 time clauses which frame a central defining clause. Each time clause is followed by 3 distinct phrases forming a tricolon. The first tricolon focuses on physical events in all the final 7 after 62:7. The second tricolon focuses on religious events starting from the middle of the final 7. The 2 tricolons center around the covenant with many for 1:7. The events of the first tricolon start from the beginning of the final 7, and the events in the second tricolon start from the middle of the final 7. Therefore, I suggest to you that there is a measure of concurrency between these 2 tricolons. Notice how the cutting off of the anointed person pairs with the stopping of the daily sacrifice. Secondly, the devastation of the city and sanctuary pairs with the abominations that lead to desolation. And the result of the devastation of the city and the sanctuary lead to desolations up to the end of the desolator. When Daniel received this word, he would recall what Gabriel said to him 12 years before, recorded in Daniel 8. He had seen a vision of the Median Persian Empire followed by the Grecian empires. The first very powerful ruler of the Greek Empire, which we know as Alexander the Great, would be replaced by 4 less powerful regimes. Following this, there would be a long, unspecified time. Through all this troublesome time, Jerusalem would be restored. And then would come another ruler described as a little horn, who would grow exceedingly powerful to the south, to the east, and towards the beautiful land. he would become so great and successful that he would be able to do as he pleases, and he would stop the regular sacrifice, overthrow the place of the sanctuary, and his evil behavior, an abomination to God, would cause desolation until his end. So Daniel would immediately connect the stopping of the daily sacrifice and the abomination of desolation in this prophecy with this vision he had received from Gabriel. So he would know that it would be fulfilled in the distant future, during the time of the end. From the first episode, we know that the time of the end must be in the time of the Roman Empire or later. Many today believe that the little horn is Antiochus IV, the Seleucid king. However, there is compelling evidence that he is in fact the Antichrist who has not yet appeared. We will look into this later. Final comment. Daniel knew his people would suffer for a long time, but blessing would eventually come. Today we have seen the suffering of the Jews through the last 2,500 years. Yet because of God's plan and purpose, they have survived despite many attempts to destroy them. And perhaps the current conflict of Israel with Iran, as it is now in June 2025, will lead to peace and the successful completion of Israel's return to the promised land. That peace is the blessing God foretold in Daniel 12:12 after 1,335 years, the length of the second time, times, and half a time.